All right, folks, let's get underway. I am Cameron Deal. I'm the Executive Director of the Utah League of Cities and Towns, and I'm honored today to be joined by friends and colleagues who also are sleeping a little bit better now that the legislative session is over. I'm joined by Victoria Ashby, the Director of Government Relations here at the League, Shelley Jackson, who's the Deputy Director in the Office of the Lieutenant Governor, and then Corey Holdaway, who is here to speak about ranked choice voting because the deadline is rapidly approaching for cities to elect whether or not to use ranked choice voting for the 2021 election cycle. Corey is also a former legislator and advocates for many cities and local government issues alongside the League at the Capitol. So thank you to everybody on our panel for joining us today, and thank you to Megan Carson for handling the tech work behind the scenes for us. So over the next hour, our objective today is to update you on election-related bills. That also includes elections as kind of the catch-all, but it includes anything that really affects public noticing, grandma, open and public meetings, the census, everything in that category will come up today. We are recording this event, so if you miss something, you can watch it later. You can share it with your friends. You can access it on our website at ulct.org afterward. We also will have materials available on our website, and you can review a copy of the PowerPoint via the link that was just put in the chat room. Seeing that we are still in the Zoom era, if you have questions, we ask you to write them in the chat, and our team will be monitoring the chat box and answering your questions as they arise. In years past, the League and the Lieutenant Governor's Office would be doing our road show around the state, meeting with clerks and recorders and others to provide this type of legislative update, but we're excited today to do it virtually, and hopefully this will still provide value to you and can be part of the new trend going forward. This is our third of 4 Wednesday web chats or webinars about the 2021 session. 2 weeks ago was on land use, last week was on transportation and economic development, and next week at noon will be on public safety. Then we will be meeting in person in sunny St. George in just a couple of weeks, April 21st through the 23rd for our mid-year conference. So please remember to register for that event because I think I speak for all of us that I'm excited to see everyone and not just talk about what happened, but lay the groundwork for what's to come and how we can work together to promote and preserve local control and local decision-making for the 2022 legislative session. So with that, let's jump into the presentation. The first thing we want to do is just give you a quick look at the different topics we'll be hitting. I mentioned some of these in my intro already, but this is your quick snapshot of key dates like May 5th on notices in the newspaper, May 10th on ranked choice voting, and that changes to census timing and the like. So let's jump into the nitty-gritty. I also want to, I mentioned it a moment ago, but we are already laying the groundwork for the 2022 session over the next few months of the interim. One of those key pieces will be about the census and what that means timing-wise for every city and town in the state. Another piece will be on grandma and then the candidate filings. So let's talk about the census. We actually did a podcast a little over a year ago about the census that you can find anywhere you get your podcast. That's our Cities Work podcast. I sat down with National League of Cities staff to talk about what they were anticipating COVID would mean for census gathering. It's still interesting and relevant information, but the census has, as you can see from this Politico headline, upended not just the 2022 election cycle, but for some cities is also upending the 2021 election cycle. And here's why. Under a normal year, the census data would have been delivered in December of 2020, and then in April by the end of March, we would have the block level data. So what does this mean? So the apportionment data is we look at the United States House of Representatives, there are 435 of them that represent the 50 states, and they would, by December of 2020, determine that Utah would go from 4 seats to 5, and New York would go from, or California would go from 52 seats to 49. Okay, it's all based on population. And if you recall, 20 years ago, when Utah came up just a few missionaries short of a 4th congressional seat, that apportionment process has major implications on not just representation in the halls of Congress, but dollars and cents for cities and towns across the country. Well, instead of that process, the apportionment data being done in December of 2020, that is being pushed off until this month. Meanwhile, the block level census data, which normally would be delivered as of a week ago, has been postponed until likely September of 2021. That means that instead of spending the summer of 2021 redistricting, and Corey, I believe you were in the legislature during the 2001 redistricting, right? That's where you lost your hair, right? Was going through the redistricting process? Okay, that's what I thought. So instead of spending the summer doing that, the legislature will now spend the fall doing that in anticipation of the 2022 election cycle. However, there are a handful of cities, like my hometown of Murray, that have council districts that are also based on population. So in Murray, they don't elect the council citywide, they elect them by district. And so you have a 2021 election cycle where you will not have updated census data in time to update that for the 2021 cycle. So that's one thing you need to be aware of. The second piece that matters to every city, so from Layton to St. George and everybody in between that elects their council members at large, is that under House Bill 119 2 years ago, every city and town above a certain size has to create voter participation areas. So it's actually every city above 10,000, I believe, has to create a voter participation area. What is expected of you in this case is you essentially draw districts that then, if there is a local initiative or a local referendum, signature gatherers have to meet a certain threshold of percentage of signatures in 75% of those voter participation areas. So if you are a city that has you draw, say, I'm trying to think of a good round number here. If you draw 10 voter participation areas within the city, they have to look like a district in that they have to meet the constitutional standard of one man, one vote. Then as someone is collecting signatures for an initiative or a referendum, they have to meet the citywide standard, but then they also have to meet that threshold of within those 10 voter participation areas. So you will need to redraw those after the census is complete. The third reason why the census timing matters is because cities use the census to set benchmarks. One of the most common ones is the benchmark of the number of police officers per 1,000 residents. And obviously, per 1,000 residents, if your city is a fast-growing city, and in the previous census you had 20,000 residents, and today you have 30,000 residents, well, you need to know that you have 30,000 rather than 35,000 so that you can set those benchmarks appropriately. The fourth reason it matters is intergovernmental revenue. And this is the big cheese, really, because everything from local option sales tax that cities impose, the 1%, to the motor fuel tax, and other federal and county revenue sources rely on accurate census counts. So again, using my example of a fast-growing city, a city that had 20,000 people 10 years ago may have 30,000 people today. You need an accurate census count to make sure that when the motor fuel tax is being allocated and 50% of that goes based on population, that you're getting properly counted for your 30,000 new residents. And then all of the benchmarks in the subsequent decade, the estimates each year, all are based on that accurate census count. So again, all of this is being delayed on the timing side. On the accuracy side, there is a new method that we wanted to make you aware of this year of how the census is counting individuals. And they are using a method called differential privacy. This is an effort to try to find that balance between an individual's privacy, so where Cameron Deal and my family live, and the census information that I have voluntarily given to the government, with securing the accurate block level count of how many people live in my block, which therefore informs how many people live in my city. there have been a small number of inaccuracies in the initial differential privacy calculation. We've been working with the Attorney General's office actually to make sure that as the differential privacy method is rolled out, that inaccuracy percentage continues to go down. If you have any questions about the differential privacy piece, please let us know. The Attorney General's office is looking for feedback. The legislature has done some really good analysis behind the scenes too about what this I'm blanking on the term now, but margin of error, what the margin of error could mean for our communities. Particularly for smaller communities, it's a concern because if you have a margin of error that is less than 1% for a city of 100,000, it's 1,000 people, but 1,000 people plus or minus, it doesn't make or break things. But if you're a community of 100 people and there's a larger margin of error and it's 30 people here or there, that could actually result in significant amounts of revenue. And so that's something we're trying to work through with the Attorney General's office. So again, if you have any concerns about the census or differential privacy method or anything else, please drop us a note. I'll pause there and check the chat room to see if there's anything there. Looks like it's just Carson right now posting the link to the PowerPoint. So I'll wait a second more on the census. Going once, going twice. Oh, okay, here's the first question of the day. The code reference for the VPA, it was in House Bill 119. I will, when I turn the time over to other presenters, I'll find the code reference and drop it in the chat box. Okay, next up is grandma. There was not a bill on this particular, oh, okay, another question. Perfect, questions are coming, this is great. This question coming from Sandy City. If a city has designated council districts, they still have to adopt voter participation areas. The answer is no, unless you want to, for some reason, have voter participation areas that don't match your council districts. But we built into the statute. Oh, thank you, Lisa. I'm going to just copy and paste. Lisa put the reference to the first question from Mark Christensen that I am now copying and pasting over. Multitasking on the fly, boom. So if a city has designated council districts, then you don't have to create new VPAs. There's a question also about the, okay, so there's a question about the benchmarks. There is no requirement in code. We just know that some cities use the benchmarks, and so that's why we brought that piece up. Then Mayor Potter asked if we have 4 voter participation areas and requirement of 4,000 signatures. Can I explain how that works? Yep. So if the signature requirement is 4,000 citywide in Cameron City, and Cameron City has 4 voter participation areas, that 4,000 signature number is going to be a percentage of all of the active voters within the city. So I'm going to be doing math on the fly here, and Shelley, feel free to chime in any minute if you see fit. So let's say you have a requirement of 4,000 signatures, and that's 10% of your active voters. So that would mean you'd have 40,000 voters in the city. Okay. So of those 4,000 signatures, that's 10% of the active voters. You would also need to hit that 10% of active voters in the 4 voter participation areas. And the 4 voter participation areas need to basically be the same number of active voters so that it meets the one man, one vote standard. So if that would essentially mean you would need 1,000 signatures, you would need to hit that 1,000 threshold in 3 of the 4 voter participation areas. So what that could look like is, if I'm a signature gatherer, I look at those 4 areas and say, okay, we're going to try to, we know we need to hit this benchmark in 3 out of the 4, and then we're going to get over the citywide threshold by really doubling down and getting a lot of signatures in the first voter participation area. The whole policy rationale of the voter participation area was that if petitioners are seeking an initiative or a referendum, that is a citywide policy decision, and you should have some participation from voters citywide, and not just say, one neighborhood or one portion of the city that's affected by that citywide policy. So that was the thought process behind creating the voter participation area. So you still have to reach, in the case of Mayor Potter's question, the 4,000 signatures citywide, but you'd have to hit that threshold of 1,000 in at least 3 of the 4 voter participation areas. Okay. Yep. Of course, Mayor Potter, that's how it works. Okay. In that case, I don't see any other census-related questions. And looking at Shelley, the Lieutenant Governor's office has been instrumental in us putting that together. Okay, Shauna, about VPAs originally required. Yes. So under House Bill 119, you had to create VPAs, but they need to be redone based on the 2020 census. I would need to double check, Shauna. You got me on this one, which for a family member, I feel dumb that you caught me on that one. Shelley, do you know what the deadline is to update VPAs post census?
Yeah, I think it's January 1st, 2022. So next January.
Okay, so January 1st, 2022. Okay, then I'll quickly hit this grandma issue, which is becoming a bigger and bigger issue. There was not legislation on this, but we wanted to make you aware that there could be legislation depending on what happens at the State Records Committee. The Salt Lake Tribune and others have filed record requests with Salt Lake City and a variety of other political subdivisions, ranging from UPD to South Jordan and others, and Salt Lake Tribune and others who are looking for internal affairs investigations of police officers that are found to be unsustained. The State Records Committee is going to be hearing this appeal later this month. There is both precedent at the State Records Committee, which shouldn't matter but does, that where we think the State Records Committee may find that the city should release these records. There are a couple of district court cases about these types of records that are internal affairs investigations that are unsustained, that they should not be disclosed publicly. And so this is something we're watching very carefully and coordinating with the attorneys within the cities in Salt Lake County that are facing these grandma requests. Again, some are coming from the media, some are coming from university journalism students, and some are actually coming from an out-of-state group that have been filing these types of grandma requests around the country. So we are participating in making the argument that these should not be public records, these internal affairs investigations into police officer conduct that are unsustained. So we will keep you posted. Depending on how that State Records Committee decision turns out, there is the likelihood that local governments would appeal that to district court. And in the meantime, we would also be trying to work on a legislative fix for the 2021 session. So some of your jurisdictions are aware of this because you've received the grandma request, but for those of you who haven't, we want to make you aware that this could become a really big deal. And our concern, of course, is that if an investigation is unsustained, we should not be putting those records out to the public because we should respect the due process and the investigative process that has occurred. An unsustained record should not be a default public record. So that's why we're concerned about that and what the reputational hit could be for officers, the confidence in those officers. So a question from St. George about when that's going before the SRC. It's the last week of April. I believe it has now been scheduled because I'm planning to watch it. Let me, again, multitasking on the fly while live. It's a beautiful thing in the Zoom era. Yeah, so Christina, I'll double check. I'm checking my calendar and I'll find it, but I know it was that it's been scheduled, and so I'll drop this in here. Perfect. Any other questions here? From David, thank you. April 29th. I knew it was the last week in April, so David, thank you. David has been a member of the Brain Trust. He's a city attorney in West Jordan and has been part of the Brain Trust as we've been working through the legal and political strategy of how to approach this issue. So, David, thanks for dropping that hearing. And that hearing is a remote hearing, a virtual hearing, so people can watch it from afar. Okay, I don't see any other questions on those two issues. So Victoria and Shelley, I will turn it over to you and Corey for the remainder of the presentation. But thank you everybody for your participation in the league, and keep asking questions. Again, everything will be posted later. And remember, the strength of the league is the membership. And so we want your feedback about not just these bills, but other potential improvements in the law that we can work on in the months and years to come. So Victoria and team, take it away.
Thanks, Cam. We just wanted to touch on this. There's been some questions about whether or not candidate filing deadlines have been changed because of COVID. Last year, there were changes for state offices because of issues with being in person and all that. And so, Shelley, I don't know if you want anything to add, but I've just put up here the statute with the deadline.
Yeah, exactly. So the filing period it's June 1st through June 7th, unless you're going to do the pilot project and you're not having a primary, then it would be, I think it starts August 10th, it starts on the primary Tuesday in August. And there haven't been any changes for COVID. It's still required to be in person. There's a couple of exceptions. The candidate would need to be out of state the entire filing period, all 7 days of it, and out of state, not just out of town. And then there's some remote options. And but there's also a nomination procedure where someone else in your jurisdiction could get some signatures and nominate that person.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's go on to the bills from this session. So we're going to cover the election bills, and as Cam said, some open meeting and notice bills as well. The first few have to deal with referendums initiatives. So HB 23, voter referendum amendments. This was Representative Nelson. And this bill clarifies in part some existing case law to make it clear in statute that a referendum can include a rezone. So the courts have looked at rezones and decided that those are legislative actions. And so definitions in the referendum statute in Title 20 were amended to reflect this. This bill also creates an accelerated process for a referendum to appear on the ballot. So the idea behind this is that when the people do a referendum process and successfully get that completed, that the lag is too long to wait to put this on the ballot for the next year, which had been current law. So it creates a process that if all these steps are met to accelerate that referendum actually appearing on the ballot. And basically the city recorder or town clerk, the county clerk, and the municipal attorney and the municipality in which the law would be referred, if they all agree, then the referendum can appear on the ballot for a special primary or general election held the same year that the referred legislative action takes place. Again, the groups who are doing the referendum need to walk through all the steps and successfully do that. But then if they want to, if these participants, the clerk, the attorney, and the county clerk agree to get this on the ballot sooner, then that can be accomplished. All right, moving on to the next one. All right, this is Representative Tusher's bill. I see a question that's popped up.
So Victoria, we just had a request for your mics going in and out. If you might either switch or increase your volume, please.
Is this better? I took off my headphones.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Sorry about that. HB 136, initiative and referendum modifications. So this had to deal with signature gathering and some of the process involved with that. So this bill precludes a person from paying a signature gatherer based on a rate per verified signature, and instead requires payment solely on an hourly rate. The signature gatherer must also wear a badge identifying him or herself as a paid signature gatherer. And then within 1 business day after the day the local clerk receives the initial fiscal impact estimate, the clerk has some steps they need to complete, which is they have to post on the clerk's website the initiative petition, the initiative, the fiscal impact estimate, and information describing how an individual may remove his or her name from the signature packet.
And Victoria, I'm gonna, sorry, interrupt you again. You're still going in and out. Some people aren't able to hear you, so you were good there when you're close, but I'm wondering maybe back to the headphones. Apologize, everyone. We're trying to just get that figured out. So we see your notes in the chat and we'll try to get her better volume for you.
Okay, I'm not sure. Let me see what I can do here.
While Victoria is working on her audio and video, you'll notice that yet again, a theme of the session was direct democracy, initiatives and referendums. And as long as I've been at the league, this has been an issue. And certainly as you look around the Wasatch Front, the Wasatch Back, Southern Utah, I think it's going to continue to be an issue. There was a lot of focus this year around the perception, real or otherwise, of misinformation in initiative and referendum campaigns. And so that was part of the genesis of some of the bills you saw. And there was a lot of focus on the lessons learned from the state process when you had the state initiatives a couple of years ago on Medicaid and marijuana, Medicaid expansion, marijuana and the like. So the House Bill 23 from Representative Nelson was one we worked on in the interim with him that was addressing that specific land use issue in Tooele County. That was a policy focused directly at local government, local land use, and the distinction of legislative and administrative authority. And then, but bills like House Bill 136 are both at the state and local level and trying to get to this issue of information with signature gatherers and signees. So Victoria, are you back?
You tell me, can you hear me better or is it just as bad?
I can hear you great, but you're also down the hall from me. So I'm looking for like a thumbs up from Corey. Okay, Corey, if Corey can hear you, then everybody can hear you.
Okay, sorry about that. Hopefully on my phone will be a better solution to that. I don't know if I missed anything in the chat box. Looks like mostly about the audio issues. So thanks, Cam.
One, Victoria, from Jean. When is the deadline and what is the process for putting a question on the ballot? For instance, to gauge support for a major project, in this case, a cemetery with an accompanying tax to pay for it, we have very little other means of effective polling in our city.
Shelley, can you help with that question?
I'd probably look over the statute again and maybe get back to you on that.
Okay, we'll give Shelley a second to look that up and see if she can get us the answer. I'll go on to the next question, or the next bill. HB 211, Initiatives and Referenda Amendments. This is Representative Thurston. There is a lot in this bill. Hopefully we've been able to capture the high level stuff. I'll just quickly go through them. So under this bill, initiative or referendum signatory has to affirm that they have reviewed the entire statement that comes with the packet when they are signing. This bill also says that you cannot alter or correct the initiative or referendum packet after it's submitted to the county clerk. Update state law of statewide referendum to require sufficient signatures from 15 Senate districts instead of 15 counties. So that's a bit of a shift. Creates new procedures for county clerks in determining when to remove a signature and when a voter can remove a signature. The bill also says that initiative and referendum applicants must include a statement indicating whether paid signature gatherers will be involved. It changes the deadline when a local clerk must declare a petition to be sufficient or insufficient to no later than 21 days after the day of the applicable deadline. There's some various deadlines in that statute, so you would need to look at that, but it's changed to 21 days. It also says the local clerk must declare a petition to be sufficient or insufficient no later than 111 days after the day of the deadline to submit a referendum packet. And I want to make sure that number is right, so I might take another look at that. And then clarifies how a local legislative body may repeal a law challenged by referendum petition to void the petition. And finally, specific to property tax referendum, those referendum sponsors must deliver the referendum packets to the county clerk no later than the earlier of 30 days after the day on which the first individual signs the packet. That's the new language. And then the existing language was, or 40 days after the day on which the local clerk starts the process. Let me just go up here and see what we have. And Shelley, it looks like you are having similar audio issues that I did. So if you can turn up your volume, maybe that would help.
Hopefully this is
Okay.
better.
All right, I'll move on to the next one. Unless Shelley, there was anything you wanted to add to that one.
No, I was going to go back to, was it 136? So it's modifying 20A7. Well, it didn't modify actually. It's still saying in 20A7 206 that it's no later than 5 p.m. no later than the earlier of 30 days after the day on which the first individual signs. This is each packet. 316 days after the day on which the application for the initiative petition is filed, or the February 15th, immediately before the next regular general election. I'm not really sure what that question was asking, and we could discuss more later if that doesn't answer the question.
Okay.
So, again, sorry to jump in, but we're still, Shelley, having some echo issues. Sorry to take time, but maybe it's, if you have, you can always call in while Victoria is speaking and try that, and we'll give it a shot. Sorry, we'll go back to Victoria.
Okay, thanks, Shelley. All right, and maybe you have a chance when we go through ranked choice voting. So some of you may be familiar with this pilot project that was expanded this year in statute, and I'm going to hand it over to Corey Holloway, who's worked with some of the cities on this. This was a pilot program that the league supported, and the bill this year changed the deadline from April 15th to May 10th, which is coming up quickly. So if your city is interested in participating in ranked choice voting, the city council would need to decide to adopt that quickly before that May 10th deadline. But Corey, I will hand it over to you. And in the meantime, I will put in the chat box a link to a video that the city of Vineyard put together about ranked choice voting if you want to learn more about it. But take it away, Corey.
Thank you, Victoria, and thank you for the opportunity to take a few minutes of your valuable time today. Utah Ranked Choice Voting is a group that has been organized to help with the facilitation of this municipal program, this pilot program. In 2018, there was the pilot passed, and after the 2018 legislative session, we had two cities take it up. Vineyard and Payson were the two cities that took it up the last municipal election cycle. And as part of that, we did some polling around that, and both polled the candidates that ran in a ranked choice voting election, and also polled candidates that, or not candidates, but those voters that participated. Overwhelmingly, in both Payson and Vineyard, the voters liked the process. They liked the option of being able to rank candidates according to their preference, 1, 2, 3, 4, or whatever, depending upon the number of candidates. Since the municipal elections in 2019, there's been also a resolution that was passed in the 2020 legislative session that encouraged cities to take up the municipal pilot program. That passed unanimously both in the Senate and in the House, and signed by the governor. And interestingly enough, we didn't know how passionate Governor Herbert was about it, but after that resolution passed, he came out full-throated in support of ranked choice voting as an option, which we appreciated as a group. This past legislative session, House Bill 75 was passed, which changed a couple of things, as Victoria indicated. Changed the filing deadline from the April 15th to May 15th, when a city needs to make a declaration as to whether or not they're going to be using ranked choice voting in their coming municipal election. In addition to that, it made some other adjustments inconsequential in nature. What I would like to do is just at least let those that are on the call today know that currently we have 5 cities that have committed for or wanting to use the pilot program for the coming municipal election. Heber City, Draper has indicated that they're going to be using RCV. Riverton City, in their city council meeting Tuesday night, indicated they'll be using it. Payson, again, will be using it again, and Vineyard as well. In addition to that, we've got some cities that are strongly considering it. In fact, I would say better than a 50% chance, more than likely, that they will be considering it. Salt Lake City is probably the most, it's the largest city that is planning to try, or at least exploring using it. Mill Creek here in Salt Lake County, Cottonwood Heights, Midway, up in Wasatch County, Newton up in Cache, Springville down in Utah County, Alta and Murray as well here in Salt Lake County. The challenge that we have had in the municipal, or in the pilot program, is that the county clerks have been reticent to adopt or encourage or allow ranked choice voting to be used. And that was part of the reason that we ran House Bill 75. It was, if we had a county clerk that didn't want to, or didn't feel like they just didn't want to, the city would have an option to be able to contract with another county or organization to be able to run or assist them in running their elections. To date, Utah County is the county that has embraced using ranked choice voting. We've had some movement of late. Salt Lake City, Sherry Swenson has indicated that she is willing to run a ranked choice voting election for any cities that are interested in Salt Lake County. And then other than that, we're reaching out to county clerks across the state to see about how they feel and if we can help if a city is interested in moving towards using ranked choice voting as an option. There are a number of other cities, as I mentioned, across the state. The deadline coming up on May the 10th is the deadline that you need to notify the Lieutenant Governor's office of your intention to use ranked choice voting as the means of, or the mode that you're going to be using for your municipal elections. That would include noticing the county clerk that assists in some in your elections. It should be noted that there's no legal requirement for the county clerk to run or assist in your city elections. By practice, many of the county clerks have assisted the cities and moved to allow the cities that support, both with equipment and expertise. So we would encourage you to continue to use those county clerks as appropriate. However, if you do want to use this as an option, I know that the Utah County clerk had indicated that they would be willing to contract with any city that would be interested in doing it. Amelia, gosh, I just had Amelia, I have forgotten her name. The city clerk for, or county clerk for Utah County. Anyway, they are willing to participate or help with any cities that want to do that. In fact, the deputy Josh Daniels is somebody else that from Utah County that has been very helpful with this municipal or this pilot program. That is largely kind of the lay of the land right now. Utah Ranked Choice Voting, we do have a website that is available. We're out there on Facebook, also on Twitter, under Utah Ranked Choice Voting.com. If you go to that, you'll be able to, and maybe, I don't know if we can put that in the chat box, but that's the website that we have. And if you've got interest or the like, we would be happy to make presentation to your city for the benefits of using this this method. And with that, I think that's all I've got, Victoria.
So you mentioned website, and I'll see if there it is. Bart Barker just put in there, UtahRankedChoiceVoting.com. And maybe this is answered by that. We had a question: is there a standard template for the ranked choice voting resolution?
Yes, in fact, we've got a template that we can make available to a city if they want to use it. And I'm happy to send that to any cities that want to move towards that. I see Bart Barker saying that UtahRankedChoiceVoting.com isn't working. I was just on there and I'm not sure.
Carson put in UtahRCV.com.
That's it.
Maybe that's okay.
Yeah, that's it. Utah RCV. Yep.
Okay. And we've got your email up at the end, so maybe if someone is looking for that template, they could email you for it.
Happy to provide that for anybody that's interested.
And then we had another question. We are contracting with our county clerk to run our election, and he expressed concern about the verification of the votes. He said the votes are counted by a third party, and we are expected to sign off on the verification without witnessing votes being counted. Is that still the case? And this came in during about ranked choice voting, so I'm assuming this question is about a ranked choice voting election.
That is not a question I have had before. I know in Utah County, the verification was done with the county clerk there. I'm assuming that the county clerk would verify that according to, well, whoever they contract with. If a city contracts with Utah County, they would verify that, and the like now in Salt Lake County, that they've agreed to assist with that as well. But I've not had that question before, so I don't have a good answer for that.
Okay. So another follow-up maybe to that. The counting is done by the county. The external software takes the CVR and runs it as a ranked choice voting election. The software is state certified. That came in with from Keeleen Potter.
Thank you, Mayor Potter.
All right. Maybe we've got. And another question for the template resolution. So we'll have Corey, maybe Corey, if you want to type your email into the chat now, but I also have it up on the last slide too. You can get it out to people. Okay, thank you so much. That kind of wraps up the election bills. Thanks, Corey. Let's see, Corey, you need to send it to, in fact, I'll see if I can, if you can send it to attendees too. Just a few more bills. SB 201 public notice amendments. So For years, there's been efforts to try and move notice more to digital instead of with the newspaper, and with the Desert News and the Tribune going to only weekly publications this year. That effort became more obvious that things needed to change. So Senator Maine's bill essentially eliminates requirements to publish certain notices in a newspaper and then put on a specified legal website. The notices must be published on the Utah Public Notice website, which has been around for a while. This bill is rather lengthy, and if you want to review the complete list of sections, we have a link to that that was provided to us. We just put that link in the chat. And so you can go through the very long list of statutes that were amended under this bill. We've since heard from session that there's more work to be done on notice, particularly physical notice requirements. And so we're eager to hear from all of you what else needs to be improved in this realm as we look towards the next session and continue to try and work on this. But I would encourage you to tap on that link and see the complete list of statutes that were modified in this bill. Okay. SB 125, Open and Public Meetings Act amendments. This was Senator Buxton's bill. We actually had, and Shelley, I don't know if you wanted to mention anything else about the notice bill. I just saw in the chat box that you sent out an email yesterday about notice. And Tracy, you asked where you can send comments about SB 201. My email will be at the end, and you're welcome to send them to me too. Shelley?
I apologize. I hope I'm not still muffled. We did have some issues with the election notices that we've come across, and so I don't want to talk about anything else, any of the other notice parts that were modified, but it did remove you can no longer, as of May 4th, so you can still do your election notice in the newspaper, but after May 4th, that is not an option, and so you still must publish on the Utah Public Notice website and one of the following: one notice and at least one additional notice per 2,000 population. So those are physical notices throughout your jurisdiction, and or you can mail a notice to each registered voter. And then you have to put on your website if you've got one. So both the public notice website and your jurisdiction's notice or website, and then either post one notice and at least one additional notice per 2,000 population, or mail a notice to each registered voter. So that will be reworked, we hope, in an interim session.
So I think some attendees are still having a hard time hearing you, but we will have a list of those who joined us today, and maybe we could send out this information that you described, Shelley, to the list, and we could send that out via email. So let's see, a question. So the question is on the public notices. So we must publish a notice on the state website. Then it reads as post one notice extra per population. However, the question is where if it's not the newspaper. So if you have to publish for population, where are you supposed to do that? And I think it's a physical posting requirement, right, Shelley? That you find somewhere within the city and you post those based on, you post the number based on the number of population that you have. And I don't, I'm assuming that those publications are often posted in municipal buildings and some other public areas around the city. All right, we'll share Shelley's email with those, with the attendee emails we have, and disseminate that information. All right, SB 125, Open Public Meetings Act. So there was a bill right after COVID came. There was a special session, and because of COVID, ULCT was able to get some legislation passed in that special session, kind of freeing up public meetings as far as physical participation. And Senator Buxton's bill, this general session, made some modifications to that and some clarifications. So what the bill says is that if you have an electronic meeting, you do have to provide space at an anchor location for members of the public to attend. And then it makes 2 exceptions to having an anchor location when you have an electronic meeting. So there's 2 scenarios basically described in the bill. The first one is that prior to the meeting even starting, the chair of the public body determines that meeting at the anchor location would present a substantial risk to those attending, or likely because of health and safety reasons, the anchor location has to be closed. In those situations, you do not have to have an anchor location available if the public notice includes a statement describing the chair's determination, a summary of the facts informing that determination, and how the public can attend electronically. So if you're not going to have that anchor location, you have to have a determination of that risk and then include this information in your notice. The second scenario is if the meeting is already happening, the electronic meeting is happening. If the chair determines that continuing with the anchor location presents a substantial risk, and the chair determines during the meeting, announces that determination during the meeting, and then states a summary of the facts upon which the determination is made, then you can suspend using that anchor location. But this is only permitted if notice for that meeting provided a way for the public to attend electronically. So I'm trying to think in my mind that you suddenly have an earthquake during your electronic meeting and things are shaking around at the anchor location, then the chair would have to determine that there's an earthquake, that things are not safe, and that you're going to continue the meeting electronically, but not at that anchor location. I think some chats have come in while I was talking, so let me see if I can catch up. Okay, going back to notice, Shelley, let's see here. Can we keep using the newspaper noticing instead of the public notice per 2,000 people, since how and where do you do that? So I think you could publish notice in the newspaper. Go ahead.
After May 4th, the newspaper notice was taken out. It's removed as an option.
It would have to be a physical posting somewhere within the jurisdiction. Okay.
That's how we say it.
And let's see. Shauna Andrews asked, is the number of notices based on population numbers or registered voter numbers? I thought it was registered voter numbers. And then we had a response to that, that statute says population.
So the physical notices are per 2,000 population, and the mailings are to registered voters. And so we've had the question a lot, well, I mail utilities newsletters out to all my residents. I think, we've kind of decided, as long as you're hitting all the registered voters, I would probably ask the county for at least a household list of registered voters and make sure you haven't left anyone out.
Okay, thank you. We want to just poll all of you quickly. I know it's hard to see into your crystal balls, but we're curious if your cities have had discussions about whether or not you're going to continue electronic meetings. So if you could just take a minute to answer these questions, it would be helpful for us to kind of just get a feel of what's going on out there in the out in your cities. So we're asking, how do you currently hold your public meetings, and what do you think you will do going forward in the foreseeable future in this period when we're still sort of in COVID, but slowly coming out of it, hopefully. Let's give a few more seconds to answer those. All right, Carson, if you wouldn't mind putting up the results. So, okay, this is interesting. Looks like as far as currently, many of you moved, just under half have moved to hybrid. and then a kind of a split between electronic and in person. And then going forward, yeah, I think a lot of us have learned a lot of lessons from the technical capabilities that are available out there. And so it's interesting to see that a lot of you think that a hybrid, at least for the foreseeable future, will be the way to go. So thank you for sharing that information with us. Let's see. And then there's a few more comments in there about posting notice and how some other people think their meetings will continue to go. Let's see, there was a question from Lisa Smith. Shelley, clarification, if we mail out notice with utility billing or a newsletter, that would count as reaching everyone?
I would get you at least a household voter list from your county clerk and just make sure that you haven't missed anyone. That's our recommendation.
And then a question from Laura Oscarson, IT in section 10.3.301, that the noticing requirements for elections do not require posting on physical locations. What part of the code says, oh, go ahead.
Well, it's the new changes with SB 201.
Yeah, so if you're looking at the code on the current legislative website, it will not show updates until May 5th when this bill goes in effect, and then you should be seeing the changes. And then Meg posted in there what Shelley said, which was get a household voter list from your county. And then Laura says, I'm looking at the bill. So Laura, we will try and take a look at that and see if we can get back to you on that question. Okay, that is it. Here are our emails, and you feel free, please, to reach out to any of us if you have questions. We really appreciate you taking the time to join us today, and we're happy to answer any questions following up. If you'd like to join us for our webinar next week on public safety, we would encourage you to do that. And we appreciate all of you taking time from your busy schedules and hope that this was helpful. Thank you so much, and we'll try and get some of these answers out that we weren't able to answer to all of you that attended. So we appreciate it, and hope you have a great rest of your week.
Thank you.